Hi guys, appreciate it's been a while. I just want to do a quick update on the sleep system. So I'm basically getting ready to plan a couple of trips for later this year. I'm hoping to go either to Nepal to do some walking around in the greater ranges and or possibly even a trip to Patagonia. But in addition to that, I am looking to do several trips over the next few weeks to test out my new ultralight backpacking loadout. So it's a sort of transition season. It's not quite summer yet, but it's getting warmer. So the conditions are ranging between sort of 7 to 18 degrees. So this is what I put together to sort of try to have something that's going to be able to cope with those sort of changing situations. So as I mentioned before, we've got the Ice Flame. It's one of their Ice Flame quilts. I'm not 100% sure on which one it is. I think it's with a combo or a mono or something like that. I think it's probably the mono. This has got the additional 200 grams of down in it. I did opt for goose down opposed to the duck down. So it's a little bit more sort of lofty and has better insulative properties than the standard. So I would say that if you were looking to get a quilt on the more budget end, this cost me, I think it was 120 to 130 pounds all shipped. Arrived in amazing packaging, you know, everything, even down to the plastic bag this thing came in. It actually mentions on the plastic bag that you are to use it as a rucksack liner. It's perfectly sized as a rucksack liner. So anyway, so to go over, we've got the Ice Flame quilt, super amazing. I did a separate video on this. Love this thing so much. Just to touch back onto it briefly, you've got one of the thicker, sort of loftier baffle at the top here around the neck, with a double closure on the back, double clip closure to sort of get that up around your neck, keep it sort of cinched down. You've got the neck cinch, I suppose you could call it, which is super nice. And you've got pad straps. So there's actually 3 available in this. So when I was doing my research into what I wanted, I did look at possibly getting the Sierra Designs quilt. However, that doesn't have pad straps, and that's a big no-no for me. I tend to move around a lot in my sleep, and it's very important with a quilt that you don't lose any of that sort of warm air that you've generated. So you can actually attach 3 onto this. So no, if you buy it directly from Ice Flame, it does come with 2, but you can order additional pad straps from like AliExpress or from Ice Flame, I believe. They're like a couple of pounds, so I would recommend getting a few of those. I bought another 2, and I decided to sew one of the pad straps onto a pillow. So sort of in the process of making a pillow that will go with this. At the bottom here, we have a 3F UL Gear Tyvek footbox. So what I've always found is the bottom of my sleeping bag, if it falls off the end of the sleeping mat, it tends to get quite damp. So I got this Tyvek foot bag. It's super lightweight, it literally weighs nothing. I think it's like 15, maybe 20 grams. It packs down to about that big, super small. Would highly recommend one of these if you're using just a tarp shelter, or if you're using an ultralight tent that has quite a thin ground sheet or is quite short, really, because my feet tend to touch the end of the tent, and then you get a lot of moisture ingress, especially with a down quilt or down sleeping bag. Super important to keep that dry because it loses its lofting and insulative capabilities if it gets too wet. So I got that. We're going to give that a try. Tyvek is super breathable. It's highly water resistant, I'd say. It's not fully waterproof. This thing's not going to, you can't submerge it, basically. The mat itself, as you can see, it's pretty thick. So this is actually the Flextail Zero mummy-shaped sleeping mat. This thing is like an R5.6. So, I mean, it depends who you ask. So on Flextail, they told me this is an R6 value, but everywhere I've seen it's an R5.6. But super good for a 4-season sleeping mat, especially here in the UK and for most of Europe. You can put this thing on snow. It's going to be used for pretty much all of my trips sort of coming up. If I'm going somewhere where it might get down to sort of -18, -20, I'm going to put another insulative mat underneath this. Plus, I've got a much thicker, loftier sleeping bag. This thing's 800 fill power. My biggest is 1600 fill power, I believe. That's a Mountain Equipment Everest sleeping bag designed for use on Mount Everest, and it has in fact summited Everest twice, as far as I know, on a couple of famous expeditions. But anyway, back to this. So we've got a really cheap sleeping bag liner. This thing doesn't weigh an awful amount, but I've decided to, the problem is I don't like the texture of sleeping mats. So what I've done, I've actually put this thing over the sleeping mat, and it fits really, really well. It's a kind of smaller mummy shape, and it fits really nicely around the Flextail mummy shaped sleeping mat. So that's going to be my bed sheet. Then I've got the quilt on top of that, and then I haven't quite sorted this yet, but I'm going to put Velcro a button on there so I can close this up, wrap it around the back to encapsulate the pillow. This is the Sierra Designs. I think it's called the something. It probably says on the pouch somewhere. Let's see. Sierra Designs dry down pillow. Would highly recommend this thing. This thing's super. It's a strange thing. It's basically a pillowcase, a nice sort of lightweight, nice sort of feeling pillowcase with a layer of synthetic insulation and then down on top. So it's nice and warm, nice and cozy and comfortable. You get a very nice sleep on this thing. In addition to that, inside is actually a cushion. So what I do with this is, because I tend to like two pillows, is I can take the pillow outside of it, the cushion out of the pillowcase, and I can put my down jacket inside of this, and I've got effectively two pillows for the price of one. Super good. I think these are really fairly cheap. I can't remember exactly how much they are. I think they're around £24 to £30 possibly, which when you compare it to the Thermarest compressible, which I know a lot of guys use, a lot of people use these for ultralight backpacking. This thing's lighter, and you have the option of having two pillows. It compresses smaller into a little pouch, and of course it's just I don't know. It's not quite as big as the small compressible pillow, and you don't get the option to adjust how firm it is. But in my opinion, I think this is probably a better buy. This is around £30 to buy. It's a bit heavier, a bit bulkier, whereas this you have the option of two, and it's just a better package really. I really like this thing. I really like it. Super comfortable. So that's sort of what I've got here. I've got the Flextail Zero mummy shaped sleeping mat, R6 value. We've got a cheap, I think this is a high gear or something like that, mummy sleeping bag liner. It's just a regular cotton, I think, or synthetic polyester. My only issue with this is I'm pretty sure it's going to get wet on the underside, which obviously will be an issue, but we're going to trial that. We're going to see how that goes. And then you've got the Isoflame quilt on top. Super nice. And the 3F UL Gear Tyvek foot bag. They do this one in like a silicone nylon, which is a really good idea because it's super waterproof. You know, you can guarantee that's going to keep your feet super dry. However, being silicone nylon, it's not breathable. I know they say it has some breathable properties. However, compared with Tyvek, there's no comparison. So whereas Tyvek's not going to be as waterproof, it's not going to be as durable. I mean, Tyvek is a strange material in itself. You know, it's still early days of using this sort of stuff. I don't think we've been using Tyvek for ultralight backpacking all that long, but so far it seems to be holding up quite well. Yeah, so this is going to be a more breathable option. These are super cheap. When I got this, you could only buy it from 3F UL Gear directly, but you can now purchase this on AliExpress. They do multiple options. I am looking to invest in the full Tyvek bivy bag. I'm not sure. I'm a bit undecided on whether to get the actual zip-up full sleeping bag style Gore-Tex bivy bag. Sorry, not Gore-Tex, Tyvek bivy bag, or whether to get the quilt version. Because I feel like in the winter months, you're not really going to be using this so much as a quilt. You're going to be converting it to more of a conventional sleeping bag by fastening it up on the back. Well, also, you know, it's still going to be more valuable unless it's getting down super cold. I mean, I'd probably use this down to maybe 0 degrees. Anything below that, I'm going to go for either the Mountain Equipment Glacier 750, which is my favorite sort of end of season, late autumn, winter sleeping bag. Or I have options like the Blacks of Greenock Karakoram, which is a very old school 80s four-season sleeping bag. If I need to go anything thicker than that, I've got the option of either the Mountain Equipment Everest sleeping bag, which basically dwarfs this thing. I mean, I might make a little comparison. If you just give me a second. Here you go, guys. So as you can see, this is the Mountain Equipment Everest sleeping bag. This is the one of the older models. I think this is from the 80s. It's not light. It's like 2 kilos. But as you see, well, as you probably can see, it is about the same thickness as the sleeping mat, the Flextail Zero, as well as the Isoflame quilt on top, just from sheer loft. So 800 fill power, 1600, I believe this is either 1200 or 1600. I'm pretty sure just looking at it right now, it's 1600. There was a lot of down in this, as well as having that the insulative capability of that 1600 fill power. It has a Gore-Tex outer shell. This is actual Gore-Tex here, as shown by the Gore-Tex label. And it also has an included bivvy hood, which is a breathable bivvy hood. It has the neck baffle, has a proper head, mummy-shaped head as well, so you can bring that in. And there's only a short zip that only stretches from about here to here with super thick baffles on the inside. I mean, that gives you probably an idea to the age of this, because at this point, mounted equipment had only supplied 14 Everest expeditions. And I know for a fact that this was built for one of them. This was specifically built for one of the Everest expeditions that mounted equipment sponsored or supplied to. Yeah, so that's sort of an idea of what we're working with here. Just two of the options. This would take me for most of the UK forest season. If I'm going abroad, if I'm going to, the Himalayas in the winter, which is probably a bad idea, but, anything super either high altitude or super cold. If I go back to Norway, Greenland, Iceland, somewhere like that, then I probably would take this one, just because I know this, in its day, was rated to around -20, -24, I believe. And I actually sent this off to an equipment supplier who did basically get a check on it for me. Of course, they're not going to know definitively how much down is left in this thing, but they sort of concluded that this thing probably hasn't lost all of it, lost very much of its insulative capabilities over the years, simply because A, it was probably only ever used twice in its lifetime. B, it was stored perfectly. It was stored lofted up. I have just got this out of storage, so it is still lofting. If I leave this here for an hour or so, it's going to get even thicker than this. Yeah, so there's two ideas of what I'm going to use, basically. Either the mountain equipment, Gore-Tex, Everest, or the Ice Flame quilt, and in a combo with these. I mean, I'm pretty sure that if I use this sleeping bag with this sleeping mat, this is an insulated sleeping mat by Flextail, I think it's going to be amazing. I did actually hear rumors that people were saying the Flextail is not as good as it says, and it's not actually insulated. I mean, if you look right there, you can see along the buffer, there's no insulation because, of course, you don't sleep right there. But you can see actually where the baffles are. You can see the reflective insulative foil that's actually inside of here. So let's just put those rumors to sleep. It's definitely insulated and it's very, very warm. So I hope you find this video useful, guys. I've noticed that somebody's commented they're waiting for the Sierra Designs High Route 1 video. I'm probably going to do that now if the weather's warm enough. I was hoping to make that video out on a trip, but due to constraints and things, I've not actually been able to get to that just yet. So we're going to see if we can do that now. But I hope you enjoyed and found this useful. Cheers.